Our next speaker, Darren Oliver. Darren Oliver is an award-winning IT leader, founder, and a mentor. With over 2 decades in the industry, he is focused on solving problems in elegant and creative ways. With 2 young daughters, he's also passionate about helping educators and education in general prepare the next generation for a vastly different world.
All right, thank you. I'm Darren. I'm from Australia, as you can probably tell. And thank you for having me here today. It's probably my 4th or 5th time to Manila. I only realised this morning that it is the tradition to say how we actually got here, so I don't have any pretty pictures, but this was the start of my journey on Tuesday night at about 11:30 p.m. 8-hour flight to Singapore. 8 hours in Singapore. It was very bad planning on my part to have 8-hour layover, but about a dozen times in Singapore and never stepped out of the airport, so this was actually a good time to go and tour around. So I got to step in outside, so that was great to see Singapore. It's a beautiful city. Then about a 3-hour flight to Manila, and then from Manila to the hotel it felt like another 3 hours. So why this talk? Why am I here? Because I think Raspberry Pis are pretty cool. My journey was, up until the end of last year, I was an IT leader, leading a few IT teams, all of IT, so including infrastructure, service desk, all that kind of stuff. And then more recently, leading software development teams as well. But at the end of the last year, I don't know if it's a midlife crisis or anything like that, but decided that I wanted to go out on my own, and so I started 2 startups. One is an IT consulting company based in Brisbane, and that is focused on, let's use some buzzwords, so aligning business vision with technology strategy. That's the elevator pitch. What it actually means, I'm not sure yet, but it sounds alright. That's right. The other startup that I'm doing, and it's probably more relevant to today's talk, is called SensorWeb, and that's about using, it's an IoT startup, an Internet of Things startup, and that's focused on getting environmental intelligence and environmental sensors and bringing it into a central place that non-technical people can actually understand and use. So it's probably a couple months away from actually being launched, but that's kind of my focus at the moment. So Raspberry Pis are cool, and Ruby is awesome. In my time leading the IT teams, I started life as a developer, as a Lotus Notes developer. Probably 90% of this room has probably never even seen it, let alone used it. It was awesome in its time, but it's met its day. We replaced that Lotus Notes system with a Ruby on Rails system, and our first Ruby app was actually built by Astra up at Quezon City, and we ran that on Engine Yard. And that was about 7 or 8 years ago. So that was just a little small app, and then we built out our entire enterprise with another Ruby on Rails environment, and that was still ongoing, but that's no longer my concern. It is T-Bo's, however, so you can go and bug him. But Ruby is awesome. Being an IT manager, my developers didn't actually let me code. I am the type of person who likes to proof of concept a whole lot of things and prototype stuff. But as soon as I know I can do it, I'll just go and look for the next challenge or the next bright shiny thing to distract me with. So when I did code, my developers would just kind of tell me to go away because nothing was tested or anything like that. And that's pretty much how this, you'll see the remnants of that throughout this talk as well. And the community about Ruby is awesome. I have been fortunate to be able to sponsor Rails Girls in Brisbane, as well as Elixir Girls. And I really think the community of Ruby and Rails is the best community in tech. And so I really like being part of that community. So that's why I'm here. And the third part is that I'm not loving Python. So when I started embarking on the Raspberry Pis and all that kind of stuff probably about 18 months ago with my startup, I was determined to do everything I could in Ruby and Ruby on Rails and all that kind of thing. But then it got to the point where trying to play with the Raspberry Pis and the sensors that we were using, there wasn't many examples out there of using Ruby and Raspberry Pis. So in order to get something up and running, I had to resort to Python. And I think it took me a week to just get around the fact that indents actually make a difference, and they just did my head in. So, yeah. So in terms of Internet of Things and all these buzzwords, it's not actually a new thing. You could trace it back probably even before the remote control. But remote control was the start of a smart home. Being able to turn a TV channel without actually having to get out of your chair. That was history. Humans, we have a history of wanting to make things easier, to automate stuff, and potentially make ourselves a little bit lazier. But it's also part of, our brains don't want to exert a whole lot of energy, so we look to ways to automate. And then around operational technology, so things around being able to monitor machines and factories and robots and all this kind of stuff. All of this kind of thing has been around for many, many years. But now we have a whole new range of buzzwords to be able to describe it, which I think is just a way for companies to be able to just sell more stuff to you, make it think like it's all new, when it's actually kind of a little bit old. But there is a difference now, and there is a difference over the last 10 years or so. So just things like connectivity, so Wi-Fi, Bluetooth, more recently LoRaWAN and narrowband IoT, all these new and existing communication methods make communicating between machines a whole lot easier. And there's the cloud, not having to run up our own servers, big data, having to, all these tools that we can use just to stream a whole bunch of data that we never even expected that we would want to have the volume for in the past. We can now consume that data and start to actually make sense of it. Then you have these other things like Amazon Alexa and Google Home and Philips Hue light bulbs and everything that makes your home apparently smarter. If you talk to my wife, she will want to throw the Google Home out whenever it doesn't listen to her, which is pretty much every day. We have smart speakers and smart doorbells and security cameras, all that kind of stuff, just really emerging. And then we have the maker movement and Raspberry Pis and Kickstarter and Indiegogo and all these other communities that we have of people just being able to access low-price technology that is now the power of a computer in your hand for 30 or 50 bucks, or whatever that translates to in pesos. And you have the world at your fingertips in terms of consumable and almost disposable technology that you can just put a Raspberry Pi Zero or an Arduino up somewhere, chuck a couple of sensors on it, and that's up and running for less than $20. And so what kind of things can we do with it? So we can make smart toasters, but more often than not it turns into something a little bit messier. But in terms of smart toasters, it's actually not such a silly thing. There's a company in Brisbane who's using toasters and also kettles to monitor when toasters and kettles are being turned on, and the use case is for older people who live by themselves, and there's a concern whether they're okay, whether they're sick, or whether they've gotten out of bed in the morning or whatever. Using something that is habitual to them to go and put the toaster on or put the kettle on, it's a non-intrusive way of saying, yes, this person's actually up and around, but they've turned the kettle on, or they've turned the toaster on. Rather than, say, a camera or a noise thing or whatever, which is potentially a little bit more intrusive. It's just that provides an extra little bit of comfort to carers, kids, all that kind of thing. Raspberry Pis and Arduinos can be used, in this case, to create an automatic internet-enabled cat feeder. This is not mine, but it's just what they can do. This one is a Raspberry Pi that scanned a photo and then is connected to pulleys and like a Sharpie, and it will draw, using the pulleys, draw that picture in just using the Sharpie on a big canvas, just using Raspberry Pi. But what we don't want to do is get to this point, where we make Raspberry Pis and smart homes and all that kind of stuff to the point where we just become big fat slobs with the with our VR goggles, and unfortunately I think we're actually a little bit closer to that than what we actually really think. And then from the industry, how people actually are going to make money out of this in the future, and more buzzwords is, so currently big talk now is around Industry 4.0, and that's around basically having all these operational technologies and combining them with the information technologies and bringing them into the cyber world. So basically being able to centralize and have all these monitors that are now connected wherever you are, anywhere in the world, rather than just being connected in the local office environment. And the other big thing is smart cities. And this is all about cities internet-enabling light poles and garbage bins and end meters, and using, I think they take the cake on the buzzword bingo in terms of all the things that they want to do with it. I don't think they actually understand what it all means, but it sounds good, and that's what gets votes. And so, let's build it. I'll just, first of all, the hardware. Yeah, thank you. So, you've probably all seen a Raspberry Pi before, and I'm not going to do it from scratch, so it's okay. It's a Raspberry Pi, and the camera module, which is in this other any-static bag, which I won't show. So there's one of those in here, in this Lego box that I'll show a picture of later. Next thing we do is we need to get an image of the operating system. So I've used Raspbian, just the light version, so there's no UI. And an app called Etcher from etcher.io, which is the best SD card flashing utility I've found. And so what we're going to do with this Raspberry Pi is, first of all, we're going to take a photo. And this is all the code that you need. You don't even need to use any gems. We are using the system command called raspi still, which is part of the Raspbian image. The reason for that is that because of the lack of support for Raspberry Pis with Ruby, they're basically just saying let's just use the system provided tools. Python has its own Raspberry Pi camera module, but this works. So, and like I said, it's all about the proof of concept. So we'll take a photo. I won't demo it all just yet. Next thing is we want to attach a sensor. So it's one of these things. This is called a reed switch, and it's basically a magnet. When it's connected, it completes the circuit. When it's not connected, it doesn't complete the circuit. You may find, I don't know if you found in your hotel room, but mine, the light in the wardrobe stayed on when the door was closed. That's actually another sensor up in the top. It's just a push sensor. I was very tempted to unscrew it and bring it out and attach that to this instead to stop the light from going, but I thought I'd better not. When you attach the sensor, I don't have an electronics background, so I've learnt all this in the last year as well. So this is all about the breadboards and adding the power and all that kind of stuff. the resistor in there. I've had to learn resistors. It's just been everything. Anyway, probably the biggest bugbear I have is that these are very neat looking diagrams. It is nothing remotely similar to what it actually looks like in real life, with cables going everywhere and soldering, bits coming undone, and it's just, it's kind of, I don't know, I think they're lying. They should put far more cables on there. So we're attaching a sensor, and we're using a gem called wiring pi. We attached it to one of the GPIO ports, so that's the set of 40 pins that are on the Raspberry Pi. We've attached it to pin number 1, which isn't actually the first pin. It's like pin number 15 or something. They have many ways that they number the pins on a Raspberry Pi. That was also quite annoying. We're setting the pin to be reading for input, and we're just checking if it's closed infinitely. So of course we've taken a photo. We've got a sensor, and the sensor is basically saying once I detect something once I detect that the sensor is open, take the photo. But taking the photo, we want to actually do something with that, because it's not very much fun having to SSH into a Raspberry Pi just to see if a photo's been taken or not. So the next step is that we are sending it to the cloud. In this case, it's Google Cloud Storage. I make no bones about it. I'm a Google fanboy. And so I'm just using Google Cloud Storage, which will send the photo that we've taken up to Google Cloud Storage, returning the file object, which we can then use the URL to access the photo. Again, being proof of concept, there's no security around it, and so all these photos are publicly accessible. However, it's going to take quite a while for them to actually try and find it. So we've taken the photo, we've detected if the sensor is open or not. Once it's open, we've taken the photo, and now we've sent it to Google. What's the next step that we want to do? How are we going to know it's actually done something? We're going to send it to Slack. And so, again, we're just using the basic Slack gem and just going to post it to a Slack channel, and that's about it. So that's actually what we've built here. The great thing about building it in Lego means that I wasn't too worried if it would get broken on the plane over. I can just rebuild it. The little minifigs here are, in fact, my 8-year-old daughter built the whole thing. There's little modifications for me. She also chose the minifigures to put on to decorate it, so that I could be reminded of my family while I'm over here. So, Tebow, can I get you to come and help me with this demo? All you need to do is open it. Oh, hang on. No, you don't. That's not going to work yet. Right. So, just so you know that it is actually all together. So this is actually the whole code put all together. I'll just clear that so you don't see my Slack token again, because it's just proof of concept. So we need to run this as sudo because of it's accessing the GPIO ports, and so we need to run as sudo to access that. Alright, not yet. The room takes a while to load on the Raspberry Pi. There we go. So now it's those ones just means that it's closed. So if you just open it. And this is running off my phone, so it might be a little bit slow. Alright, you can close it again because it's going to keep taking it. And then, if I can find Slack. Oh no, Slack died. There we go. Thank you. Thank you, T-Bo. So that's a really quick demo of how easy it is to actually use Ruby on a Raspberry Pi. You're probably not going to do it in a production environment, but just from having fun and from getting your hands on some technical, like hardware stuff, and being able to put your code that you love writing onto something that is physical, that the sky's the limit with what you can do with this. You can add motors, you can add many more sensors. I could have it light up and blind you, and have a big blaring buzzer that sounds as soon as the sensor's open, or whatever it could be. It could be a weather station you want to build, whatever it is. Ruby is absolutely possible to be used for the Raspberry Pi. And so it is all just like Lego. Like the Raspberry Pis, you're just adding in new things all the time. You're adding in sensors, you're adding in motors or whatever it is, so you're just building blocks on one of the other. And then Ruby is also just like Lego. You just get the gems and you just piece it all together, and you're building amazing applications without having to write a whole lot of code, because you're just relying on the goodwill of the Ruby community who have done the same thing before you. It's just up to you how you piece it all together and make it into something that is in a unique and awesome way. So there's a few resources and stuff. One of the two things I'll point out, Resin.io. If you actually are wanting to get into IoT, check out Resin.io. It's basically a Docker environment that allows you to run Docker containers on Raspberry Pis. That means that you can, in an enterprise setting, or even just for one or two Raspberry Pis, it's free for up to 10 devices. But basically what it does is runs a Docker container running their image on there. It allows you to do remote updates, so it can be set wherever you want it to be. If you have any updates to your code, you just do a git push resin, whatever, and it'll just push the code out to the Raspberry Pis, recreate the Docker container for you. It does it in an A/B fashion, so it'll run the Docker container behind the scenes. Once it's up and running, then I'll just switch over, so there's limited downtime. And the bottom one there is Christopher Biggs. He's also running a startup in Brisbane, mainly focused on the Internet of Things. He has done some great talks. That talk there is a really good one to, I guess, a bit of an intro to IoT and how it fits into the enterprise and what this new world of Industry 4.0 is all about. So, thank you. Thank you for having me. Are there any questions?
We have time for a few questions.
Hi, nice talk by the way. Just a quick question. How do you find Ruby for IoT so far? Is it too young? Do you find yourself like writing so many system calls instead of just having an API or the wiring Pi?
So right now I'm still using Python in my production code.
We're pretending not to hear that.
Yeah, I would love to use Ruby more, but it is around just things like just being able to access the USB serial ports and GPIO ports. We can certainly do it here, but then when it gets to dealing with GPS modules and all that kind of thing, there's more support out there for Python to be able to support that. My ideal is once I've got my startup up and running, then I'll go back and do it in Ruby. But that's my big goal in the future. Whether that actually happens or not, we'll see.
But by the way, if you're into Elixir 2, there's a project called Nerves project. It's very nice for embedded software too.
Oh, cool.
Yeah.
Check it out.
Any more questions? Okay, thank you, Darren.
Thank you.